all admitted students, and welcome to our academic panel. My name is Erica. I'm a fourth-year business major with a concentration in accounting. And a couple things I'm involved in here on campus are I'm in the Society of Women in Business, I'm in a social sorority, I'm in the honorary accounting organization, and something I was involved in during my first and second years on campus were something called a first-year leadership organization. So Georgia Tech has created these special organizations intended for first-year students. And there's a variety of different ones that you can participate in. The one that I was involved in was called Emerging Leaders. So it kind of allowed for us to partner leadership development with community service on campus and around Atlanta. So I highly recommend looking more into first-year leadership organizations. And if you have any questions about those, please feel free to ask during this event. But now I'm going to switch it over to Gavin and Amanda, who will also introduce themselves before we get into answering your questions.
Hey everyone, my name is Gavin. I'm a second-year computer science major here at Georgia Tech from Denver, Colorado. In addition to my participation with tour guides, I'm also a part of student government, or SGA, as a part of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And I also do undergraduate research in the International Affairs Department. My research group looks into sustainable urban development. But yeah, thrilled to talk to you all about academic life today.
And yeah, hey everyone, my name is Amanda Walters. I'm a fifth-year mechanical engineering major with a minor in computer science, specifically computing and intelligence. And I'm originally from Ackworth, Georgia. So a couple of things I'm involved in besides tour guides. I'm an undergraduate teaching assistant for our Computing for Engineers course. I'm also, in the past, have been on the club rowing team. I'm on women's recruitment team, as well as a campus ministry. And I've also worked for 5 semesters as a co-op or intern in different roles within companies. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, so we're going to get into our first question. Is the culture more collaborative or competitive? Do you have time for a social life? So Gavin or Amanda, do you want to take this one away?
Sure, so I can take the start. So I would say that was definitely one of the things that I was nervous about coming to Georgia Tech, just because it's a great academic school. And obviously with that comes a lot of talented people. And I really wanted to make sure that the school that I was choosing was going to be like nurturing my passions and allowing me to interact with other people in that same way. And one of the things that I've really loved is how collaborative I think Georgia Tech is. So definitely, I'd say more collaborative than competitive. Obviously, people are going to be involved in different classes and everyone wants to do well in those. But I feel that within those classes, everyone wants everyone else to succeed. So, for example, in my computer science classes, being able to kind of talk with other people about the concept in the class and the different projects we're working on, and then translating that back to like mechanical engineering. I've had met so many different people just through study groups, because everyone is kind of in this together. We all want everyone else to kind of understand the information and be able to succeed. And that's one of the things that I've really valued, that although there's so many people who are interested in so many different things and so many different passions are here, everyone ultimately just wants everyone else to succeed, which is something that I found really great to be at Georgia Tech. And then I guess the second part of the question, as far as balancing kind of academics and social life, I would say the key for me was getting involved in a lot of different things, because that really helped my time management. So that coming into Georgia Tech, I was scared that I'm a mechanical engineering major. So I was like, it's probably a hard major, probably going to be studying like all the time. And yes, you're going to have to put in hours to like do homework and study and go to lecture and actually like learn the material. But I found that for me, getting involved in a lot of different organizations really helped me to balance that time. It helped me to meet a lot of different people. One of the cool things about Georgia Tech I kind of touched on earlier was just how people are passionate about a lot of different things. And with that stems a lot of different people you can meet depending on whatever organizations you want to be a part of. So for me, kind of balancing like, okay, I'm just going to work on school for like this part of time, but I know I have like these meetings tonight, or I'm hanging out with these people, or I have like this organization, really kind of helped me to break down my schedule in a bit of a better way, so that I wasn't just studying constantly 24/7, but instead managing my time so that I was able to get things done in a shorter time, and then still have time for other things as well.
I certainly also wanted to touch on the collaborative versus competitive part of that question. because I think the collaborative environment comes from a few different places. And to an extent, I do think it is cultural. For instance, in one of my classes in the past 2, 3 weeks, I was asking questions on a big like class group chat. And someone then messaged me individually to work a problem through with me. And, when I thanked them for that, he said, no, this is, I think, part of my obligation as a fellow student is, we all just help each other through the struggles we encounter along the way. But I also think that the collaborative nature of a lot of the classes comes from structures that professors will put in place as well. And it definitely varies by class. But one of the examples that comes to mind is one of my computer science core classes. So not like an elective class, definitely not a trivial class, but our professor actually releases the test questions to all of us verbatim on Friday. And while the test itself will be closed book over the weekend, we have the whole weekend to do it. And the reason the tests are structured like that is because he is trying to encourage us to actually try to work through these test questions with our peers before we end up going into the test, which sounds like a strange way to do test taking, but I think it's an example of how professors can actually encourage collaboration in their classrooms.
And we have another, those are great answers, guys, by the way. And we have another question coming in that I think we can all take a stab at. Was the change from high school to college hard? How did you do it? I can start this one. It is challenging to move from a high school setting to a college setting, not only because you're moving into different classes that more so focus on the career or like field that you're interested in going in, as opposed to the general courses that you usually take in high school. So unless you're really interested in biology and a bunch of different sciences, you'll really only have to take those introductory classes at Georgia Tech before you move into your more major specific courses, whether you're engineering or business or international affairs or really anything. So the transition just from class structures is a little bit different because you start to also kind of relate what you're learning in class more so to any work experiences you're doing or research opportunities or just the real world in general. So the class change is very different, but I also think it's something that Georgia Tech does a great job in helping to facilitate as you transition into those classes. We do have prerequisite courses and other classes that are more general focused before you start moving more into your major specific classes. So the transition comes in steps, which makes it a little bit easier to kind of transition out of that high school class mindset into the college class mindset. So that's kind of how I did it, was just doing my introductory courses during my first year and then slowly adding on more major specific courses until I was entirely in classes dedicated to my major. So Gavin and Amanda, do you have anything to add to this question?
I think for me,
I can add on. Or Gavin, go ahead.
Okay. I think a lot of the change for me kind of came from the environmental adaptations that I had to make, in the sense that, of course, the experience of being in university is very different from that of high school. But I think that applies to the academic side of things as well, in the sense that a lot of the time management that goes into academics kind of gets delegated to you as you come into university. One thing that comes to mind for me is, I always had someone, not directly, but effectively telling me to go to class in high school all of the time. And that was built in as a requirement. And in a sense, in university, for the most part, classes aren't necessarily a requirement in that sense. Some classes will either have very small participation grades for going to class or none at all. So a lot of the responsibility of taking classes, whether that be going to class or utilizing resources outside of class, kind of falls on your shoulder. So to me, a lot of the adaptation that I had to do came from learning how to be more proactive myself, knowing when I needed to take advantage of certain resources, and then making the choice to go and do that. For me, the big one is definitely going to class. I really try not to skip any classes because that's the way that I do most of my learning. And, it works a little differently for everyone, but I think that responsibility gets magnified when you move up that level.
And then just kind of adding on to that, so one of the things that I really had to learn how to do going from like high school to college was how to ask for help. And I know in high school, it was really easy because you were in you're in your high school class. You can just ask your teacher if you have any questions at that time. And then generally a large portion of that class is also going to be like working with other students on different problems or things. And then coming into college, I was like, oh, this is fine. Like I can just sit and struggle on my own if I'm like not knowing how to do a certain problem or if I'm not understanding a concept. And that was very much me for like the first year. I was like, I'll just like sit and struggle, do it on my own. And it would take a lot longer. And then I started learning the magical thing of office hours and going to TA office hours as well. And I was like, wow, I've like literally been sitting here looking at this problem for a couple hours. And then I go to office hours and it's like 5 minutes later, I am like done with the part I'm stuck with. And that was shocking, crazy, right? But I think for me, like learning how to go to like professors' office hours and go to TA's office hours was one of the biggest things that I needed to learn how to be like more proactive about. And now like myself being a teaching assistant for a class that I used to take, I realized like how important it is to like take advantage. Like we have office hours that we're just like scheduled to be there, and sometimes like students don't come, sometimes they do, but like the students who do come, like we're able to give them a lot of help. And you can like sit and struggle on a homework problem or like a concept in the class, or you can go and get help. And that was, yeah, one of the biggest takeaways as I've kind of gone through my time here at Tech too.
Yeah, thank you guys. So we do have another question coming in. So this is a person-specific question who is an HTS major and is thinking about switching to public policy or adding public policy. And their question is, will I be able to fit in not being an engineer or computer science major? So I can start with this one. As I mentioned earlier, I am a business major, so I am not an engineer and I am not a computer science student. We dabbled in that and decided that business was definitely more suited for me. But I personally have not felt like I was out of place being on Tech's campus just because I wasn't studying engineering or computer science. Many of my friends are engineers and computer scientists and in the College of Sciences and the School of Industrial Design, as well as the other schools, College Business and College of International Affairs. I think Georgia Tech has more of a community that overlooks what exactly you're studying and more focuses on you as a person. So there's generally no judgment when it comes to what your major is. People are really just interested in who you are. And there's also a lot of overlap. So because Georgia Tech is a institute of technology, technology is ingrained in a lot of different classes. So engineers and computer scientists and business majors and everyone else on campus, they have a lot of overlap in their material and are kind of looking at technology and everything just from a different perspective. So in my business classes, we still talk about technology. There's classes regarding technology strategy, and we have information systems where people are learning how to code in a different way than computer science majors are, but there's a lot of overlap there. So everyone's kind of in the same boat, just focusing on a different part of like the larger changes in the business world and the way the world is just changing overall. So I myself personally have felt that I still fit in not being an engineer or computer scientist.
Also, I want to touch on the part of the question that spoke to changing majors, because that was an experience that I had as well. And I think there was definitely a thought in the back of my head when I was deciding to switch, mind you, from an engineering major into computer science. Like, what am I doing? I came to an engineering-focused school, and now I'm trying to switch out of that major. But on the one hand, I think that to echo what Erica said, Tech is focused in the sense that we don't have that many majors, but what that does mean is that there is the appropriate infrastructure for every major here on campus. Every program that Tech offers as a major is going to have a lot of support behind it, in part because we are kind of selective about the majors we offer. So that was part of the thought process that I went through, in the sense that, for one, computer science is still relatively close to engineering, but also that it's here at Georgia Tech for a reason. But then similarly to what was mentioned, I've never felt like someone was judging me for my choice of major. Although, again, I will concede that computer science does fall into that engineering CS umbrella.
Okay. And our next question is piggybacking off of this discussion of introductory, I can't read today, apparently, introductory course selection. Can you skip introductory courses with AP credits, and would you recommend doing this? From my knowledge, and I'll let Amanda and Gavin touch on this as well, you can use AP credits or international baccalaureate credits if you have those as well from high school. So I personally came in with 30 credits, making myself a sophomore by credit hours, as is said occasionally around tech. But you can come in with those credits. There's actually a listing on one of Georgia Tech's websites that shows you what score on an AP exam or an IB exam is required in order to fulfill the requirement for an introductory class, whether it be history or one of those sciences or an introductory math course. But you absolutely can do this, and most students at Georgia Tech do. And in addition to the AP and IB credits, you can also use dual enrollment credits. I actually had a friend who just recently graduated who came in with 60 credits to Georgia Tech because of how much she had dual enrolled in high school. So I definitely recommend doing that. It kind of allows for you to jump into those major specific classes earlier, and kind of allows for you to potentially graduate earlier if that's something that you're interested in doing. Amanda and Gavin, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so for me, I would definitely recommend like taking the credits that you come in with. And the reason for that is, so yes, like some of those intro, like I know for like engineering, your intro math, your intro physics, they're going to build on each other. But if you pass the AP exam, you probably have a pretty firm foundation in those as well. And so I came in with, gosh, I forget I think like 20 something credit hours, but that really allowed me to get a lot of my core requirements out of the way and allowed me to free up my schedule to take other classes. So I was able to, since I could first take, I started off taking like a fewer number of credit hours per semester, just to like kind of get my feet wet with Georgia Tech. But it also afforded me the opportunity to work for a lot more semesters, so I'm graduating in 5 years, but I've worked for about a year and a half full-time while I've been in school. And I think a large part of that, being able to do that and still graduate in 5 years, was coming in with some credit hours. And then also I was still able to add on a minor to that as well. So really just taking those core credit hours and whatever credit hours you can come in with, and like applying those to your degree just allows you the opportunity to take cooler classes that you're really interested in, that really... Because, I mean, if you want to be honest, like, would you rather take this cool mechanical engineering elective if you're a mechanical engineering major, or like your introductory, like, history class? So, I mean, that was kind of the thought process I went through, and it just enabled me to first move on to my major classes a bit sooner and give me the opportunity to do a lot of different things as well.
Okay. Our next question is, how did you plan your classes by year or semester? Did you already have a clear path in your head of what you wanted to do when you graduated and used that for your planning?
I definitely planned by semester, and to the latter part of that question, did not necessarily have an overarching plan. As I mentioned, I changed my major, and I think that was kind of a reflection of not really knowing where I wanted to take my studies originally, and I'm honestly still trying to figure that out. But fortunately, I don't necessarily think that's necessary when it comes to planning semester by semester. I would also stress that when courses get released to choose from, my plan going into registration is never the same as the classes that I actually come out of registration with. So I'm constantly changing my plan. And in fact, sometimes I'll look back on some of my old plans to think about what that would have looked like. But certainly it's a very dynamic thing, particularly, again, as someone who doesn't necessarily know where they want to take their degree leaving university. There's a lot of flexibility in regards to that.
And then for me, I would say a big thing that I would do my first couple semesters is go see my academic advisor. So for every major that you're in, you'll be assigned a specific academic advisor, and they're really skilled with helping you to select the classes that you need to, as well as like telling you like which classes you probably shouldn't take together. So like for mechanical engineering, I would like go into my advisor and kind of show her maybe what I was thinking about taking, and she'd be like, oh, like these are like some really hard classes or like really project-based classes. You might not want to take those at the same time. And it was also good for me because with like a prerequisite chain, so making sure, just like running off like what I was thinking of taking before I registered with an advisor to make sure I wasn't missing any prerequisites that I would need like in a later semester as well. just to kind of plan that out. And then, so I found there's a lot of flexibility as far as like what classes you can take in a certain semester in order to meet your degree requirements, but it's really just making sure you hit the prerequisites that you need to, so that you're not pushing off classes that you think that you might want to in a later semester. And that really, for me, was going to my academic advisor and making sure a lot of things. And then I also came in undecided engineering, had no idea like what I wanted to do. And one of the classes I found really helpful was, it was a freshman engineering seminar course where basically every single week, a different faculty member or a different person from every single engineering major would come in and kind of speak about that specific major. And it kind of gave me a bit of perspective about like what I thought I might be interested or whatnot. But from an engineering perspective, if that's something you're interested in, a lot of the classes that you're going to take like your first couple of years are going to overlap between like different majors. So you're going to have to take like your introductory maths and physics, and like any other sciences, and then like statics and things like that. So a lot of them are going to overlap between majors. So even if you do decide to change your major later on, some of those classes will tie into different degrees as well.
Yeah, and just to add on to Amanda is talking about the usefulness of academic advisors. Schools and these academic advisors have also posted outlines for recommended schedules by semester. So I know that when I was a first-year student, honestly going through orientation, I was handed a 4-year plan outlined by semester by the Scheller College of Business that kind of recommended what classes to take when, and so that was also very helpful in helping me to pick and choose when I wanted to take classes. Okay, another question going back to credit hours. So if I have 20 IB credit hours, does that mean I can graduate in 2 years if I also do a summer semester? So every school has different, or every major in a specific school has a set amount of credit hours that are required in order for you to graduate. So 20 hours is absolutely beneficial in helping you to graduate earlier if that is your intention. But it really depends on what your overall major is. So some majors, such as chemical engineering, they have a set structure where it's really difficult to graduate early, just the way that they have it structured and the amount of credit hours that are required in order for you to graduate. But in other schools, in other majors, it may be a little bit easier to graduate potentially a semester early because of those extra credit hours. Gavin and Amanda, if you have anything to add to this question.
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to like how many credit hours too that you feel comfortable taking. And that really varies from person to person. So for example, like I like to be involved in like a lot of things outside the classroom as well. So I was okay with taking like a smaller amount of credit hours in order to still be able to participate fully in some of those other organizations. But if you want to like graduate early and like take more credit hours each semester too to meet those requirements, that's totally like a personal decision. And both ways, I've had friends who have taken a lot of credit hours each semester and some who have taken fewer. And it's really just like kind of how you want to meet those degree requirements and what you want your path forward to look like.
Yeah, I would just mention there's definitely a bit of an opportunity cost to taking a lot of credit hours, and that comes in the form of some of the extracurricular options. And similar to what Amanda said, I personally don't like taking a lot of credit hours because I like to have a bit of a balance between extracurriculars, schoolwork, and then also free time as well, which is really valuable to me. So it's very much a personal choice, and you can kind of try things out, see what works, see what doesn't for you. But certainly you will probably find that you'll be taking more credit hours per semester if you are interested in graduating early.
Okay, and this question is for you guys. What's the average number of all-nighters CS and engineering students have to pull per semester? What's the workload like in general? Number of hours per day or week? So take it away, guys.
I've never pulled an all-nighter.
I have never.
Oh, sorry.
No, I think, go ahead, Gavin.
Oh, I was going to say to me, sleep is the end all be all in a lot of ways. So I definitely try to make sure that I'm getting, my 8 hours of sleep a night, and try to keep workload at a relatively minimal requirement. And I think a part of that comes back to what we were talking about in terms of course scheduling. there are ways to kind of organize your course load and structure your degree path that prevent you from having to do that. I could definitely see if someone was taking the maximum number of credit hours and involved in a bunch of extracurriculars where they could start getting strained, but that just absolutely does not seem appealing to me. But I would mention that for anyone, you'll be able to graduate from tech in 4 years without having to pull an all-nighter, assuming that scheduling is done well enough. I think it's definitely not too much of a problem.
Yeah, and then piggybacking off of that, I've never pulled an all-nighter. I refuse to pull an all-nighter, and I've never needed to either. For me, I think it comes down just to balancing your time, and a lot of that is like planning. So if you have like a lighter week 1 week, then being able to kind of plan ahead. So for me, I hate procrastinating, and I always prefer to like try and get as much done ahead of time as I can. And that really, like, if you wait until the last minute to do your homework, then you might be working late into the night in order to try and finish it before the deadline. But at the beginning of the semester, your professor is going to give you a syllabus of like what all the assignments do pretty much for the entire semester. And you have a pretty ample amount of time, I would say, of course, it's class specific as far as like how far in advance you're going to have an assignment. But if you're able for me, I just like to work on things in chunks at a time and be able to kind of do what I can as soon as I can, and not procrastinate in that way. So that's kind of my 2 cents. I definitely prioritize sleep as well. But the workload, I would say, is definitely manageable. That's something I had to learn as far as like how to manage my time best, how to study, and especially so as an engineering major, so I had to learn how to a different way to study than I had in high school. So a lot of things, like when you're working on different engineering tests, or like study sessions, it's going to be like more problem solving. So you have like the general concepts that you learn in your classes, and like specific formulas and how to use those, but your tests are going to be actually applying those to different situations. So it's not like a straight, like, here's an equation, what's the answer? It's more of how can I use the equations that I've already learned in order to apply those to different situations. So I just had to learn how to study for those types of exams as well. So not necessarily just memorizing how to do certain problems, but how to really conceptually understand what was going on so I could apply it to like similar problems. And that was just like a learning thing that I had to learn throughout my different times, throughout some of the different classes I had, as well as far as just how to study in general.
All right, great answers. I could not have answered that at all. You guys did great. So next question is, how do you plan your weeks in general? Do you all have set schedules, or is it more fluid? So I can start with this one. I have very structured schedules for my weeks that I make approximately 2 weeks in advance. This is something new that I started when Georgia Tech kind of moved more into an online format in order to help keep track of everything that I had to do, because hybrid and just COVID definitely makes you forget more things just with everything that's going on. So I plan out each day and list all the assignments that I'll complete on that day. So I do this basically like once I finish 1 week, I'll start the next couple of weeks in advance. So I'm very structured in what I do, and I try to keep to that schedule as much as possible because it helps to prevent stress later. But I also allow for it to be a little bit more flexible. So if something comes up where I have a meeting that came up and I hadn't accounted for, or I decide that I want to take a break and reallocate my time to something else and just switch things around, I'll update that on my little schedule. I keep it on my laptop, so it's easy to switch around when things do come that are unprecedented or announced at the last minute, or if I just want to do something fun and I don't want to do an assignment that day. So have a set schedule, but also change it around depending on what's going on in my life. Amanda and Gavin, if you have any other scheduling techniques.
Yeah, I really do think it is a matter of finding what works for you, and that looks a bit different for everyone. I wish I could be as rigorous as the process you just described, but that's not for me. What I do is generally have the digital calendar, which I use religiously, and then a to-do list, also on my computer. And we'll use those as kind of the main tools for structuring. So I don't necessarily structure when I want to do certain assignments. Rather, I'll keep track of due dates and use the calendar to keep track of events that are synchronous that I have to be at. But for instance, when it comes to like taking runs, I'll kind of just eyeball it. Or when it comes to doing certain assignments, it's like if I have free time where I've kind of decided mentally that I'm setting this time aside for work, then I'm going to pick the assignment in that moment that seems most appropriate to work on. So I do think you can the approaches can run the gamut from going in arms flailing to having something that's really structured. And some people can apply the former, where they're kind of just really flexible about everything they do. For me, I absolutely need to keep track of those synchronous appointments because otherwise I'll forget. But yeah, I definitely recommend experimenting because there are, a ton of different approaches.
Okay, so how do you best manage a good work life and social life balance?
Yeah, I can start that one off. So for me, I think the biggest thing for me is going back to like the scheduling thing, making sure I know what needs to get done, but then also like not being too strict as well. I am definitely a perfectionist, and throughout my time at Georgia Tech, I've learned like you don't always have to get 100 on every assignment. Like it's going to be okay. If you are sitting there struggling for a while, and you just need to take a break, like that is okay. Like your life or your self-worth doesn't depend on whether you get like 100 on this assignment or you do a little bit worse on that one assignment. Because ultimately it's like the culmination of a bunch of different things. So for me, it's just about kind of that balance, knowing like if I like have to spend like a couple hours less studying for this test in order to like go and like either go for a run or go to the gym or hang out with friends, then that's okay. And that's like a sacrifice I've learned that I have been willing to make. And if you'd asked me that like a couple years ago, I would have been like, no, like school, like all the time. But I think for me, it's all about knowing when like you need to take a break and knowing when you need to work. Because obviously there's going to be times when you need to stick your head in the book and grind out and like study for this test and really like get to know what's happening. And you might not, for like those couple of days, it might not be that you have the best social life just because you're really trying to get this good grade on this test. But then other weeks it's going to be a little bit different where you might have a lighter workload and you have more time to hang out with friends or do different organizations. But for me, like blocking off time on my calendar is what really helps me to know, like at this time, like I have this meeting for this club or I have practice at this time, or I schedule like lunch with a friend at this time, and trying to make sure that I schedule time in for me as well so that I'm not just go like 24/7.
Just in general, I've found that I have a lot more free time nowadays than I ever did in high school. And the fact that there is just so much of it, or that you're spending a fair bit less time actually in class, has been immediately beneficial when it comes to not only making time for social activities, but also just personal time for myself. And I recommend, if you can, or if your schedule allows it, to try and carve out some hours just to take for yourself as well. I think it's ultimately beneficial to your productivity and your interest in social activities long term as well. But that's what I'd say.
Okay. This question is for Amanda specifically. So it says, you mentioned that you are part of the co-op program. I am also a prospective mechanical engineer who is interested in this program. What was your experience? How was the transition from school setting into the work environment?
Okay. I love the co-op program. I could talk all day about it just because I had such a great experience at work. But actually, that was not something. So initially, I just wanted to. So I guess let me back up. So for those of you, there's kind of two ways that you can do like work experience while you're in college, specifically with like a company. And that's through either the co-op program or an internship. So the co-op program is going to be alternating between work and school. So you'll do a semester working, take classes the next semester, work, take classes, and then work again. So generally, it's a 3-semester commitment. And then an internship is generally going to be with different companies. Normally they're in summer semester, but they can also be in like spring or fall. But generally an internship is just going to be more of like a one-time commitment. Sometimes people will get return offers from different companies as well to go do like multiple internships for the same company. But in general, the co-op program is kind of a more structured, like I'm committing to do like 3 rotations with this company. And then an internship is more of a 1 semester commitment. So for me, I kind of wanted to do an internship when I started out. So fall of my sophomore year is when I really started like looking for a job. And I was thinking like next summer, like I want an internship. And I wasn't really even considering the co-op program because I wasn't sure if I wanted to be away from campus in like the spring or the fall semesters. But then I went to the career fair. So we have an AllNighters career fair held in the fall and the spring of each year that has a lot of different companies that will come and basically recruit for different opportunities, whether that be internships or co-ops or full-time jobs. So I ended up talking to one company and they only did co-ops, but I loved the company. I interviewed with them and they offered me the co-op and I was like, I got to take it. So I started spring of my sophomore year. So I was working in medical devices in a manufacturing plant. And then also at this time, like, I really didn't know what it meant to be an engineer. Like, I knew, like, yeah, like mechanical engineering, like, I had general idea of, like, what that was. But as far as, like, what you do on a day-to-day basis, I had no idea. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So it was definitely a bit of a learning curve as far as, like, this first couple months in the co-op trying to translate these skills that I'd learned from school into work. But it was really such a great experience. And I ended up going back there the following fall and then the next summer. And one of the things I really love about the co-op program is just that it allows you to stay with the same company. So you get more and more responsibility as you go through it. So like I came back for my second rotation and like my first week back, I was already getting asked to like work on different projects or like run different protocols. And I knew how to do that because I had already been there for a semester. And it was really cool to be given like more responsibility and not have to go through like that training period again. And that was really great. So I did that for 3 rotations. And then last summer and fall, I worked for like, it was a different role within the same company. So it was like a 7-month co-op. But Georgia Tech recognizes that kind of as like 2 back-to-back internships. So that's kind of how I registered it with Career Services, was like 2 back-to-back internships, like a summer and a fall one, even though it was like a 7-month long rotation. So I worked with in a different role within the same company. And that was a really great experience too. It was actually all virtual as well due to COVID, but it was a really great experience. And yeah, one of the reasons I kept extending my graduation to like 5 years, so I'm graduating in about a month, but was just because of how much I loved getting work experience, and I really loved seeing different roles within the companies, and kind of having the opportunity to kind of learn about that. Because one of the things I really learned was, so you learn a lot of these things in the classroom as far as like technical skills, but one of the things that I really grew in when I was working in industry was the communication side of that. So a lot of time, like engineers in particular are going to wear a lot of different hats. So of course you need those technical skills and like those problem solving skills. But then the other side of that is, how do I lead a team? How do I manage different projects? And how do I put all of that together and work with different people? And that was something that I really found valuable, to be able to kind of have this solid base that I had from Georgia Tech from like the technical perspective, but then be able to learn so much more about like the communication and like the soft skills as well, in addition to like really learning more about the technical skills and getting to apply those. But I rambled for a lot, but I highly recommend, if you're interested, if you don't know what you want to do, or if you do know what you want to do, take a look into like the internship or co-op program. And even like as soon as possible, like even like your first year, if you aren't even like really looking for an internship, I'd still recommend like going to the career fair in the fall and just like seeing different companies and talking to them, because it kind of just gives you an opportunity to learn more about what different companies do and what different roles might look like. Because a lot of like different majors, there's not one set career path. There's not going to be one job that you have to do with the specific major. There's a lot of different opportunities and room for growth. So just learning like what you're interested in and what you think you might be interested in, and working and getting that work experience is a great way to do that. So.
Okay, thank you for sharing your experience, Amanda. That was great. So our next question is, did you intern or co-op? So I guess Gavin and I can take this one away. So I've interned 3 times during my time at Tech. I've interned every summer since my first year. So kind of the opposite of how Amanda was talking about with a co-op, where you're working with the same company, accumulating responsibility as you go through it, and kind of cementing your relationship with that company. I interned with 3 different companies, so I was doing a wide variety of different things with each internship that I had. And it kind of allowed for me to narrow down what it is that I actually wanted to do career-wise. So I actually started working for a French automobile manufacturer doing data analysis about the auto market in North America, so Canada, Mexico, and the United States, in order for them to develop market entrance strategies. They actually just recently merged with Fiat Chrysler, so it's kind of cool. And I say that I worked for Fiat Chrysler even though I was pre-merger. But that experience was very different from what I did this past summer. I was a virtual audit intern for a Big 4 accounting firm, learning about audit procedures and practices. So having those 2 different internship experiences kind of allowed for me to narrow down what it is that I was interested in doing. And I would say that my middle internship was more of a combination that kind of allowed for me to experience internal audit and internal consulting, and the data surrounding that. So it was really during that second internship where I actually had the opportunity to go to Detroit and do an internal audit of a subsidiary firm that kind of sparked my real passion for the audit industry and the audit practice, and kind of led me to where I'm ultimately going today based on my last internship. So the internships really allow for you to have those diverse experiences and narrow down what it is that you want to do. And of course, Georgia Tech classes also help facilitate this understanding of what it is that you're good at and what you want to do and how you want to start your career. So obviously my accounting classes in the Scheller College of Business have highly contributed to where I am headed career-wise, but it was those actual industry experiences that helped me to really understand what it is that I wanted to do. Gavin, do you have anything to share?
For sure. Yeah. As a second year, last summer was not the most advantageous of times to go internship hunting. So I ended up working on a personal project instead last summer. But I do want to touch on the subject briefly because I was an intern at an internet service provider in the Netherlands prior to coming to Georgia Tech. And while there, I discovered something I didn't think I might, which was what I didn't want to do when I left Georgia Tech to find a career. So I would just emphasize that. I think at times internships can be just as good as helping you kind of narrow down your range of what you might find yourself interested in, as they can be kind of opening your eyes up to something that you do want to do. And I think either of those experiences is valid.
Okay, and this is our last question. So what benefits do you get as a TA? Does the college pay for part of your tuition? I am personally not a TA, so I will pass this on to Amanda. I believe you said you were a TA, yeah. If you want to take this one away.
Yeah, so I can speak about College of Computing specifically. I'm not too familiar with like some of the other TA positions. So I know you can be, or I guess I can touch briefly. There are some courses like in mechanical engineering or obviously other majors as well where you can be like a grader for specific courses, and they'll provide you like a stipend for each semester that you grade. And then I guess transitioning back to TAing, so for College of Computing in particular, you'll get paid, or for your first semester, you'll take it for credit. So I think it was like a 3 credit hour course that I was enrolled in like the first semester I TA'd. And then every subsequent semester, it's been paid by hour. So that's kind of a bit about the experience as far as what you get out of TAing. So I'd say that's definitely a great way. I personally didn't even think about being a teaching assistant for the money, but that was just a perk that came with the job. Like you're getting paid to do something you help students and do something you like to do. So that was definitely something that given me a little more side money on the side as I've been going through. But it's really been, besides that, just a great opportunity to get to help different students. But there's a lot of different on-campus jobs as well, not specifically TAing. So like our campus recreation center will hire a lot of different students, and then there'll be like student assistants for different positions as well. So yeah, that's kind of a bit about kind of how TAing works as far as for credit or for pay.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. The last thing that we are going to do is share our why tech stories. So all of us have our reasons for why we decided to come to Georgia Tech. So I can start. So as we kind of discussed earlier, I am a business major. So when you think tech, you definitely think computer science, you think engineering, you think sciences. So that's why I decided to come to tech. I knew that Georgia Tech would kind of facilitate interactions with technology in every class that I took and kind of help me prepare for the ever-changing business world. So I did come in as a business major, so I knew that was the path that I did want to pursue. But I also knew that Georgia Tech would help with this education and kind of prepare me for jobs that may not even exist yet in the business world. And that's the most cliche thing that I say, but it's absolutely true. You'll see people getting internship positions, co-op positions, full-time job positions that didn't exist 5 years ago. And Georgia Tech is really at the forefront of preparing students to not only tackle that change, but to be the source of that change. Students here are inventing new things and changing the way that the world works. And I knew that Georgia Tech was like that. And that was kind of what drove me to become a part of this community. Even if I wasn't on the engineering side or the computer science side, I knew that Georgia Tech would just prepare me in every way to do whatever I wanted to do in the workforce moving forward. Gavin and Amanda, do you have anything you want to share about your Y-Tech story?
Certainly. I think I applied to Georgia Tech on somewhat of a whim. Coming from Denver, I was looking at a lot of places closer to home, looking at schools in the Western United States, but I did grow up here in Atlanta for a little while. So I was somewhat familiar with the reputation that Tech garnered. And at the time, I was looking to be an engineer at university. So I said, I'll put my name in the hat and we'll see what comes of it. But my experience at Georgia Tech, which ultimately brought me here, came in March of that year when I ended up visiting campus just to see what was going on here. And there were two things that immediately stuck out to me. The first is that I think Tech has a really apparent get your hands dirty kind of ethos that exists on campus. And that was something that was really appealing to me. The example that comes to mind is that I got to see the Materials Innovation Learning Laboratory, which is a little makerspace specific to the Materials Science Engineering department. And that really struck me as unique because materials science engineering is, by all accounts, a very niche major. A lot of big schools don't even have it as an option. So to think that they had maker spaces and resources just for this major that's only composed of a few hundred students maximum really had me thinking about the kind of opportunities I could take advantage of while I was here at Tech and at the time while I was a materials science engineer. But the second thing is I think the campus environment is really special. And part of that comes from the culture that exists on campus, but I also think that it's contributed to by its location. I really wanted to be in a big city, a place that was super exciting and interesting, and I think Atlanta is all of those things. So it's a really good place to have a university for a ton of different reasons, and I absolutely love being here, and Atlanta definitely contributes to that experience as a student.
And then for me, so I grew up in Georgia, so I'd always heard of Georgia Tech, being from Georgia. However, I wasn't really sure I wanted to go there because it's pretty close to home for starters, and I didn't really know if I wanted to go to, I guess, a college in the city. So I really wanted that campus environment, feeling like I was on a college campus in a college town. I wanted the sports, I wanted the school spirit, and from what I heard about Georgia Tech, I was it's this academic school where everyone just studies all day and that's it. That could be further from the truth. And so I visited campus, and one of the things that stood out to me was Georgia Tech does have basically its own college campus. We kind of call it the Georgia Tech bubble, where it's kind of like we were just plopped in the middle of Atlanta. So we have our own college, all of everything that makes up a college campus, our own buildings, our own roads, it's kind of all enclosed in this one thing. And then you walk a couple feet off campus and you're in Midtown Atlanta, and you get access to everything that Atlanta has to offer too. So that kind of checked the box. And then just hearing all of the different school traditions and the school spirit, and knowing that we had the football, the basketball, and we're actually doing pretty good in basketball this year, and all of the different sports, and having that true college feeling as well. That kind of showed me that Georgia Tech kind of put it on my radar. And then I guess for me, the academic side was also pretty huge. So it was just kind of icing on the cake that it had all these things that I was looking for in a college experience, but also the fact that there was so many people who were so passionate about what they were doing. And I think that just comes from the student body itself. So we have these really great academics, and we have all these professors who are really at the forefront of their fields. But then we also just have people who want to change the world. Like, people have so many different diverse and influential passions. And if I can't even count like the number of people I've talked to who just have like this dream that they know that they can accomplish. And that helped me to like know like I can accomplish these things too, like being surrounded by such like highly motivated people who are really smart too, but also just want to do things that are going to impact the future. And that goes back to like our motto, like progress and service. But just like having like all of this conglomeration of all these things I was looking for in a college was something that really spoke out to me.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who joined us. And congratulations on being accepted to Georgia Tech. I know that we all hope that you will pick Georgia Tech as your school